December 8, 1956, Vancouver, British Columbia. The Pacific air crackled with excitement. It was the East-West All-Star Game weekend, and the city was hosting the second annual CFL East-West All-Star Game, a spectacle of Canadian football bringing together the nation's best players for a good cause. This wasn't just a game for bragging rights. It was deeply rooted in philanthropy. The East-West All-Star Game was a Shriners event, with all net proceeds dedicated to supporting Shriners Children's Hospitals. Thousands packed into Empire Stadium. Marching bands filled the halftime air with music, and the energy of the crowd was electric. For players and fans alike, it was a weekend of celebration, camaraderie, and the thrill of Canadian football at its finest during the annual East-West All-Star festivities. As the weekend drew to a close, the festive atmosphere began to dissipate. For many of the All-Star players, it was time to return home, heading eastward to their respective teams and families. On December 9th, Trans-Canada Airlines Flight 810 was scheduled to depart Vancouver, bound for Toronto and Montreal via Regina and Winnipeg. Among the passengers were 5 celebrated CFL stars. Their All-Star weekend concluded, ready to resume their lives and careers. In a chilling twist of fate, several other legendary players were also ticketed on Flight 810. Stars like Bud Grant, Bob McNamara, Jackie Parker, and Normie Kwong were scheduled to be on that very same North Star. But through a series of unforeseen circumstances, a missed connection, a change of plans, they never boarded, unknowingly escaping the tragedy that awaited. Boarding the 4-engine Canadair North Star, along with those 5 celebrated players, were many other passengers, each with their own stories and destinations. None of them could have foreseen the tragedy that lay ahead, hidden amongst the towering peaks of the Coast Mountains. Flight 810 departed Vancouver at 6:10 p.m., bound for Toronto, carrying 59 passengers and a crew of 3. The flight initially proceeded as expected, following its cleared route towards Calgary. But as Flight 810 climbed, conditions deteriorated rapidly. The crew reported encountering icing during the climb, followed by moderate turbulence between 16 and 18,000 feet. Then heavy jolts rocked the aircraft as it reached its cruising altitude of 19,000 feet. Just 38 minutes after takeoff, at 6:48 p.m., the North Star crew radioed a chilling message: fire in engine number 2. The crew reported shutting down the affected engine and declared their intention to return to Vancouver. Minutes later, the situation grew even more critical. Struggling to maintain altitude on 3 engines and with ice possibly forming on the wings, the crew requested and received clearance to descend. Their last reported altitude was just above 15,000 feet, and they requested further descent as they passed Hope. Air traffic control cleared Flight 810 to descend at or above 8,000 feet. The crew acknowledged, and this was their last radio contact. Adding to the mystery, the accident report noted that for undetermined reasons, the aircraft was not on Green Airway number 1, the designated path for its return to Vancouver. Sometime between 7:10 p.m. and 7:21 p.m., approximately an hour after its departure, Flight 810, losing altitude, vanished from radar and slammed at cruising speed into the eastern face of Mount Slesse. In a heartbreaking detail revealed later by one of the searchers who reached the wreckage, the North Star had tragically missed clearing the mountain peak by a mere 50 feet. At an elevation of approximately 7,000 feet, in a remote and unforgiving wilderness, the Canadair North Star was obliterated on impact. There were no survivors. The precise chain of events that led to the crash remains undetermined. Investigators concluded that it was highly probable that Flight 810, already compromised with the loss of an engine, encountered severe icing, turbulence, or downdrafts, or a combination of these, that overwhelmed the crew's ability to maintain altitude. News of the crash sent shockwaves across Canada. Search and rescue operations were immediately launched, but the unforgiving winter conditions in the remote location of Mount Slesse made the task incredibly difficult. For days, searchers battled treacherous terrain, deep snow, and bitter cold, driven by the desperate hope of finding survivors. But the reality was devastating. All 62 souls on board Flight 810 had died. The aftermath was a nation in mourning. The loss of so many lives, including those of 5 prominent athletes, resonated deeply across Canada, casting a long shadow over the holiday season. Among the victims were 5 stars of the Canadian Football League, young men at the peak of their athletic careers. We remember them now. Cal Jones, just 23 years old, a dominant all-star lineman for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Mel Beckett, 27 years old, an all-star center and tight end for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Mario DeMarco, 32 years old, an offensive lineman for the Roughriders. Ray Cernick, just 22, a former Saskatoon Hilltop and guard with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And Gordon Sturtridge, 27 years old, an all-star defensive end for the Riders. Tragically, Mario DeMarco and Ray Cernick were not even scheduled to play in the All-Star Game, having traveled to Vancouver merely as spectators to cheer on their teammates. In a powerful act of remembrance, the Saskatchewan Roughriders permanently retired the jersey numbers of Beckett, DeMarco, Cernick, and Sturtridge. Their names are forever enshrined at Mosaic Stadium, ensuring their legacy endures. Their promising lives and the lives of all 57 other passengers and crew were tragically cut short on Mount Slesse, their fates intertwined in this devastating event. In a remarkable and poignant connection that bridges generations, Cal Jones's grandson, Edwin Harrison, carried on his grandfather's football legacy, first as a player with the Calgary Stampeders and now with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, currently serving as the team's offensive line coach. Today, the slopes of Mount Slesse remain a remote and challenging wilderness, but the site of the Flight 810 crash is also now a place of solemn remembrance, a memorial in the mountains. In 1995, the BC provincial government dedicated a 1,400-acre site around the crash area, naming it the Mount Slesse Commemorative Site. Though difficult to access, it serves as a lasting tribute to all those who were lost on that tragic December day, their memory forever held in the heart of the Canadian wilderness.